Up, everybody? Brian Mendler back in your life on another edition of the podcast. And today I'm super excited to be joined by Rae Hughart. And we've been trying to get together for a while now. And I'm super glad to have you. How are you?
I am so good. So glad to be spending my Saturday morning this way. I've been super excited to chat with you.
I know, same. By the way, I think you probably everybody says this to you that you have the best name in education. Is that true?
No, but why?
I
Tell
love
me.
it. What do you mean, Hughart? What a great name, right?
I know. I feel like there's 1,000 different ways to pronounce it, but the spelling itself is what makes it gold, right? Hug, heart, put them together.
Is that not how you pronounce it?
Well, typically I go Hughart, but I will tell you, I think I need to change it a little bit, add an E so it's a full heart name. And I think I could do like a whole like swag thing with it, like a t-shirt line. Come on.
For sure. I'm going with Hughart. I mean, you can call yourself whatever you want, but I'm going with Hughart. It's good to see you, and it's great to finally get a chance to meet you. And I actually wanted to start this morning. I had a chance this morning to watch your TED Talk, which was great, by the way, on mastery learning. And there was something that you said there that kind of jumped out at me, and I was curious about it. You talked about struggling as a kid in school and special ed. And so tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, first off, that TED Talk was so cool to do. I have like a million things I would do differently. It's always hindsight's 2020, but I appreciate you watching it. It's a fun little opportunity to at least like dip your toes into the mastery learning concept. And yeah, my passion for it totally comes from my background as a struggling learner, which I feel like we all have our own story, how we got into education. But for me, I was diagnosed SLD when I was in second grade for reading, writing, and math. And my mindset was like, well, if you can't be a good learner, if you can't consume knowledge easily, then you're dumb and you can't be successful. And that was kind of the weight I carried with me. Teachers worked really hard to change my mindset, and I was able to get IEP support from incredible educators my entire time in public education.
Was it hard for you though? Like, do you remember being in school and school being a hard place for you?
Oh, I hated school. Like I was the student you never wanted in your class because my mom would be like pulling me into school at the beginning of the day after the bell, and I always be crying, and I was always being pulled out for services. So I never felt like I was in the classroom very often. And aside from all that, because we all do our best to make all students feel welcome, but I really struggle reading. Still as an adult, I've been in education for over a decade, and as a human being, I am not a reader. I consume like 80% of content that is like put at me in audio form, emails, text messages, everything. And that support that exists thanks to technology, I only found thanks to teachers that showed me how to find resources to support what I needed. It wasn't necessarily about fixing me, but how can you support a student utilizing this incredible world we have to gain resources to be successful.
It's so amazing the world that we have today compared to even when I was a kid. And like because I was the same. I struggled as a kid with reading, and like they always used to make it seem like if you couldn't read, you couldn't be successful. And today, I mean, you either you have to read or you have to listen. But if you can listen, and listening, right, is I'll put that skill up there with reading nowadays, because really you can get anything audio version, which has just changed the world for me.
Well, absolutely. And think about what we're doing right now, right? Hopefully we have a really valuable conversation. If not, I know we're going to enjoy it regardless. And this is an opportunity for educators to learn, talk shop, share perspective, gain connections. And this is a platform that will hopefully every single moment as we all work together to connect, better our field, better our understanding of education. And I don't know that we'll be reading much on the show, and that's okay. There's opportunities to learn.
It's so true. So was there a pivotal moment for you? Was there a sort of a time where you remember kind of going from like struggling student to a person who, I mean, obviously you're incredibly accomplished right now. So take me through that journey a little bit.
Sure. I don't know that there was ever a pivotal moment where I feel like I made a big movement to finding success in this area. I still, as an adult, I'm not a good reader. I don't read menus. I don't like consume emails. This is just not something that I feel like I have the skill set for. And so full transparency, I feel like there was never a moment where I was like, okay, now I can be successful. But I will tell you the biggest moment I think I had was the realization that I was successful in areas, because for a long time I believed I was unsuccessful in one area, therefore unsuccessful in all of them. And the reality is, even as adults, we know we're really good at some things, we're okay at other things, and there are some things we're bad at. And that's human nature. That's why we connect with people that have strengths and weaknesses in different areas. So a big element of my upbringing that I definitely chose to embrace as an adult was that my two parents were both in the design industry. They're both extremely successful business people, and they were professionals at networking and just talking to people and BSing their way through conversations. I'm like, hey, I like that stuff. I like talking to people. I like cocktail parties, being social, making connections, introducing my friends to other people. And, I think that networking is not celebrated as much in our field as it should be. That's a really powerful tool.
No question, no question. And a couple minutes ago or a minute ago, you said success, right? Like, and I think that's has to be the foundation with a lot of kids, right? Like success has to come first. And like once we have success, I always think of it like a clock where you have the 12 would be you have the word success, where the 3 would be you have the word confidence, or where the 9 would be you have the word competence. And basically, like, think about a ball that spins between those 3 words, because in life, those 3 words are breeders of each other. They breed each other, right? Success breeds confidence. Once I become confident, I start to become more competent, which makes me more successful, which gives me more of this, which gives me more of that, right? But some kids have never tasted any of those 3. They don't know what success is. They don't know what confidence is, and they don't know what competence is. And so it's important sometimes to shove them, so to speak, into that cycle, and once a kid tastes one of those things, and I think not just kids, but adults too, all of a sudden you see the change in them.
Well, and as teachers, we focus on trying to build up our students' skills holistically. We look at the whole child and we say, this is an area of growth. How can I support them in it? But the other element is acknowledging the areas they are successful in to continue that perseverance. And so I see educators do this all the time. I know that we, love being able to see those aha moments, being able to see a student enter and exit our classroom feeling awesome about themselves and being hopefully a little bit, brighter in a certain area. And so it's this vicious cycle that we get to balance as educators.
Don't you think that's like one of the hardest things though, like as a teacher, is because I mean, I think like this one of the great skills of great teachers is their ability to find things that kids are good at, even if they don't present themselves, right? Like sometimes things don't outwardly present themselves and we have to dig a little deeper to find where the kid is good.
Yeah. And I have to tell you, I early on in my career could not figure out for the life of me how in the world we were supposed to do that, because there are so many things we're supposed to do as educators. And a lot of it is, at least when I was learning it and trying to implement it my first few years, I'm like, I have all these things to balance. I'm spending 45 minutes talking at my students, but I'm supposed to also get to know them. But how? I'm busy talking. I can't get to know my kids. And it wasn't a lack of desire. I was hungry to get to know my students, but 2-minute passing periods isn't building a relationship. And me being funny in the front of the room might build a relationship of trust, but I still don't know them at the end of the day. And so I was dying to find a system, a way of teaching that helped me like stop talking, move from a content delivery system into a facilitator. And I know I talked about that in my TED Talk.
Yeah.
That's like what I live and breathe now, is this mastery learning concept, because no other reason truly. I just liked moving away from the front of the room and like talking to kids, like this gift of time to talk to my kids.
How do you do it though? Like, how do you do it? If you're a teacher and you don't really know where to start, where do you start them to say, this is the journey I want to go?
For sure. And full transparency, guys, there's so much out there. And so I have suggestions for you, but please do your own due diligence. You do not need to follow my systems at all. I just love them because it worked for me. And so with the Teach Better team, we actually do a lot of training on this concept. I encourage you all to go find a framework that works for you. I like the grid method, but if you find one that you like better, go crazy. I hope you get so successful. And if you run into hurdles, let me know. But what this framework allows us to do is you dump all of your content, your curriculum, whatever subject area, it doesn't matter. And it allows you to create a system where students only gain new information when they've mastered the concept. So you become a facilitator in the classroom. Students are not working independently. There's a big confusion that like self-paced means on your own. Not true. You can be self-paced on your own learning journey in collaboration with students. Classrooms are meant to be loud and exciting and full of dialogue and conversation. And you as the teacher, rather than like delivering the content to ensure they learn, should be facilitating those dialogues, facilitating those conversations. And it's a little bit of like a buzzing bee in a classroom for the time that you have students. But the hope would be that with this framework and with really great classroom management, which we believe like is a synonymous, you have to have both. Otherwise, we're setting ourselves up for failure. But then we're able to see students learning at their achievement level, finding success every day, while you get to be a part of that celebration, part of that reteaching, and then part of just the overall structure management.
Yeah. How do you define mastery learning though? Because I feel like that term is a subjective term. Like, how do I know if I've mastered something? And like the thought of not getting any new knowledge till you master something, there has to be some kind of criteria for what mastery is.
Yeah, so it's really interesting. Like mastery learning, competency-based learning, and personalized learning are being used synonymously, and they're not. They're not the same. So I think it's really interesting as we as educators become more educated in our field on how we can reach students that we know those different definitions. So personalized learning is something a lot of people are talking about. And really that has to do with personalizing a student's journey through learning, typically leading towards like voice and choice in the classroom, which I think teachers love opportunities of voice and choice for students, but it's hard to manage if you're not giving yourself the right alignment of content, which we can talk about. The other element of mastery learning is not so much the voice and choice, but it's allowing students to only get access to new information when they've confirmed for you as the educator, they've built the fundamentals and understand the concept that they can layer on another structure. So what I really am an advocate for is making like a bologna sandwich of education. We got to layer all these things on top of each other. And then with the hopes of layering best practices on top of best practices with this really good hearty sandwich that we're able to function in our classroom with all of our students. So in simplest terms, I think we all as educators want to create these structures where students are consuming and engaging and then innovating in their content. And we as teachers need to really do our due diligence of aligning our content, starting with the standard, using the backwards design, all the boring stuff, right? Creating targets, creating those aligned assessments. And then we get to create really cool learning opportunities to ensure that we get the data so we know that students mastered the content.
Okay, got it. Yeah, that's a lot. So, voice and choice, that kind of jumped out at me. What do you mean specifically by that? I don't assume people know what we're talking about. So, like, what do you mean when you say specifically when you say voice and choice? You said that a few times, and that rang with me.
So it's important that our students are not just consuming, but interacting in our classroom, right? So when we present information or present a challenge or a learning opportunity to them, allowing them to have a voice in the experience, have an opinion in the experience, be a partner in the design experience, and also choosing how to best meet what you as the teacher are trying to accomplish. We all are trying to have students master these standards. No matter where we are in the world as teachers, there's targets that we're working as our job to have students meet. And so how a student gets there may not matter depending on what that standard asks of the student. I think it's important that we provide that creativity opportunity.
Do you though, like, so in a specifically, like in a classroom, like you have, let's say you have 30 kids in a classroom, like what's the, because I can see teachers saying, yeah, like that sounds great. And it does sound great, right? But how do I really give choice and voice to 30 kids at a time?
So it's interesting. I think that question has less to do with content and more to do with classroom management, because we as educators love these ideas. Like flipped classroom 20 years ago is this really great concept, but no one could manage it. And homework became a big nuisance. And so when you ran into these hurdles, you didn't know how to fix it because it was just a management issue. It wasn't it wasn't the concept itself. And so classroom management's a huge part of what I get to do training on with teachers. It comes down to a number of different things. Again, there's no like one fix for anything in education. We got to layer these things on top. So one element is making sure that your framework and your routines are extremely sound and consistent so that it's easy for the student to engage and also easy for you to manage. The other element is progress monitoring. We have to allow our students to track how their pacing is going and be reflective in that opportunity by goal setting every single day. And so as we look at how we give students choice, I think sometimes choice is perceived as freedom, which sure, I love that. Let's create some freedom in the classroom. But we also, in the background, before we give it to kids, need to have a ton of structure. And so depending on what dilemma you're experiencing in your classroom, it's probably just an opportunity to brainstorm a new classroom management support so that everything works cohesively every day and not just like great on Tuesdays and really crappy on Wednesdays, right? Like let's make it good all the time.
Yeah, it's hard though. It's hard. And
Oh, it is.
that whole concept, right, of, like when it comes to behavior, especially, I think it's normal to see that roller coaster ride where like kid behaves well on Tuesday and then all of a sudden Wednesday's a disaster and Thursday. And sometimes it's good hour, bad hour, especially with little kids.
And I think the biggest thing with that is we can't necessarily control all the factors our students are experiencing. So instead, can we put in routines and structures that give us the time that when those things bubble up, we can deal with them and not dismiss all the other things that our other students could be doing while that one student needs our attention. Again, this gift of time to really be a human in the classroom and not just a content delivery system like YouTube.
Yeah, and I think a mistake that some of us make is we think that all kids need all things, and not all kids need all things, right? When you talk about voice and choice or like any of those sort of things, my thought is there's a lot of, like, my son's a good example, right? So my son's in fifth grade and he's an amazing student. He loves school, right? He's the kid who comes home and plays school, right? He sets up his Beanie Babies and teaches them after school. Like he loves it. And so the truth for him is he's the kind of kid where no matter how you teach him, he's going to learn because he loves being there and it's where he wants to be. And so I think for certain, it's really, that's where differentiation comes in, right? The willingness, right? For one kid, I might do one thing, but for another kid, I might do something else.
Well, and the reason that's so tricky, and I've experienced it so much, is it's not a lack of desire. Teachers are incredible. We want to do everything and anything as often as possible for our kids. The issue is we don't always know how, and sometimes it feels like we're pulling the next trick out of the hat. And that's really the biggest thing for me. I don't consider myself a very smart person. I'm a routines person. I really am. I need something that I can learn to do and then do it repeatedly in a routine, and it can help me be successful. And this is what I mean by strong classroom management. It can't be, okay, it's Tuesday, what's the next trick I'm going to pull out of the hat? It has to be something that works every single day differently for every single kid. And that really comes down to making sure that our routines are sound and, go from there.
Yeah. And right. I totally agree. So you're a middle school science teacher now, correct?
I was a middle school math teacher, and I taught reading, writing, and science, but math primarily my career. Yeah.
So are you still that? And like, how did you become a math teacher?
Yeah. So
like,
when
why?
How and why? When I went into school in college, I wanted to choose the worst job possible because my mindset at that time was I wasn't supposed to get into college in the first place. I was not a college-bound student.
Right. You said that. You said, by the way, you said that in your TED Talk. You said, and that jumped out at me too. That was not to interrupt you, but the other thing you said was that you were told that you weren't good enough to go to Illinois State, which now you're a faculty member of, correct? That's hilarious. I love how things come full circle like that.
Well, but you know what? I think a lot of this was like out of anger. Like my mom jokes with me. She's like, "Are you done now?" I did things just to spite the fact that I was not supposed to. In high school college was not the plan. It was not something that people in my life thought was an opportunity, was a good choice. And so their suggestion was to find another route after high school. And lo and behold, on a whim, after years of tutoring for that stupid ACT, I got a score that somehow got me into ISU. And full
What did you
transparency.
get? Do you remember what you got?
Oh, a number. I have no idea,
I
but
know
I
what I
know that
got. It was bad.
it was
I did
way
bad.
lower than what they said online I was supposed to get. So when I got in, I was like, okay, I'm not going to take this opportunity and then like go do something that I could have done anywhere else. If you're going to go to ISU, you go into teaching. And if I'm going to be a teacher, I'm going to be like in the worst subject and figure out how to make it good. Because then if I fail, it's like, well, I wasn't supposed to be in college anyway. So who cares? So
That's
I
good.
picked the worst subject is math. That's the worst subject of all
Why is
time.
it the worst?
Oh my God, it's so hard. I don't know my multiplication facts. Like I told you, I really was a struggling learner. So I'm like, it'd be funny if I had an IEP and didn't learn math. I barely passed math. I got a D in 6th grade math and I ended up being a 6th grade math teacher, right? Like these are funny things.
It
And I was
is.
like, wouldn't it be funny to be a 6th grade math teacher and not know your math facts and still figure out how to do it successfully? I don't know. Let's find out.
So how did you do it? How do you do it?
You know, I think there's two different answers to that question. How did I do it in school? Too much studying and a lot of tutoring and a lot of support, thanks to a lot of people, not just any one person. But how do you do it in the profession? Don't care what content you teach. If you're a good teacher, you can teach anything. And I think that's what I eventually learned is I loved the philosophy. I loved the engagement with kids.
Yeah.
And then the content, I can figure out how to align my standards depending on what grade they put me in and what content they put me in. What I'm actually finding myself feeling confident in is engaging with tiny humans.
Yeah.
So
And people, right? The mindset is people come first, right? Like the focus has to be on people. And I always say like the content is like the product, right? But people come before product. And any good salesperson knows that. If you're a sales rep, you know, I don't sell a product, I sell a person, right? And what that means is I have to get to know the person first. I have to understand them, what drives them, what makes them tick, what interests them. And once I figure that out, then I can look at my product and say, okay, how can I connect my product to that kid's world? And I think as a teacher, when we do that, we see a whole different level of engagement from a lot of kids.
Yeah, and I want to challenge anyone listening. If you consider yourself really, really strong in content, I would give yourself a moment to be reflective of how you are in that people engagement, because I see a lot of educators that are really defeated because they feel their identity is in their content. And I have to tell you, if you've made it this long in education, if you're still teaching right now, November 19th, like you have more than just content knowledge. Give yourself the credit that you have so much to offer, not only this field, but your students.
It's certainly, I think, more true with middle school and high school teachers, because middle school and high school teachers in general are content experts all day. It's really what you are. And like when you are that all day, it's easy to start to believe that you actually really are that, which I don't think really any of us are. We're all constantly always learners first, right?
Absolutely. And so if you can find yourself, really feeling confident in the philosophy of teaching, the philosophy of people, then regardless of what classroom they put you in next year, if your principal moves you at a grade level or moves you content, or you have a different, curriculum next year, you're going to be fine. It's going to be a lot of work, and that's frustrating. Yeah. There's no way around that. But you'll be great at it because you are more than just the content you teach.
Yeah. And the thought process is to teach what's in front of you. I used to coach baseball, and sometimes when a kid was in a slump, I would try to make the game easier by just saying, see the ball and hit it. Like sometimes we complicate things. I think teachers in general are really, like, teaching is a simple profession for complicated people. Like we can complicate the daylights out of 2 + 2. You know what I'm saying? And make it like, and sometimes you just got to see the kid and teach them, right? And like, I don't always know what that's going to be. Like it might be Shakespeare, it might be math, it might be fractions. It might also be how to say please and thank you. It might also be how to have manners. It might also be how to, one of my favorite skills to teach my students was how to act interested when you're bored. That was probably the number one skill, because I taught self-contained kids, and like, these kids, So their problem wasn't that they were bored, which they often were, but it wasn't that. It was that they always had to show everybody how bored they were, right? So they would have to come in and roll their eyes and put their head down and lean back in their chairs. And I would say to them, y'all can be bored. Like, no one cares about that. But can you act interested while you're bored? And like, my point is, I think so often as teachers, we miss those moments, and people call them teachable moments, but I don't really think there's any such thing as a teachable moment. I think there's teachable seconds. Like, I wish I had 60 seconds to be like, let me decide. Should I go in this direction or that direction? Like, you don't get that much time. By the time it's like football, you get the handoff and you're going to go to the left and that hole's closed. You got to go right immediately. Like, you don't get 60. Hold on. Let me ask coach for permission. No, right. You get the ball, you go left. There's no hole. Boom. You cut back right. And like, are you willing to cut back right as a teacher and see what you're like supposed to teach, but also what kids need to learn? And I think personally for me, I think that's really the burnout happening in education right now, right? There's like those two things that live at the same time. There's as a teacher, there's what I'm supposed to teach, which is a real thing, right? Comes from everybody but me, right? As the teacher, like I basically had, I don't know where it came from. It came from the administrators, came from people at the state, right? Came from all these people but me. And it was a real thing, right? And it was like, it causes pressure on teachers because teachers are like, I need to get that. I need to, teach my content. And it's a real living thing. But then there's also this other thing called what kids need to learn. Right? So what I'm supposed to teach is over here. What kids need to learn is over here. And I always feel like when those two things line up, meaning what I'm supposed to teach is also what they need to learn, teaching is at its easiest. I don't think teaching is ever easy, but it's at its easiest. The problem right now, though, is I feel like what I'm supposed to teach is in New York. What they need to learn is in LA, and the teachers are getting caught in Nebraska, right? And it's like you feel this pull between, well, I'm supposed to do this. I know, but they don't know how to talk to each other appropriately. But I'm supposed to, but they need. Supposed to, but they need. And one of my rules is anytime I feel that sort of pull, I always trust going with what they need over what I'm supposed to, and trust the process that going with that will lead you back to where you're supposed to be.
But this is the classroom that we need to create right this moment that may have not been the case if you were reflecting right now and you've been teaching for 20 years. This is the type of classroom we have to move into. And I really feel that the only way to do it is to get out of the front of the room and find a way to allow students to be leading the charge in a lot of this stuff. Not leading the charge in the content.
No doubt.
We get paid. Our job is to have students master a certain set of standards, and you need to ensure that happens. But that's where I go back to mastery learning. That's where I go back to these frameworks. I don't care what framework you use, but the framework I love not only ensures your curriculum is aligned, but ensures that you have the classroom management so you have the time to have these conversations. It's not about the framework. It's not about the management. But if you can free up your time, which these things can provide, then you can have the conversations with students that come up organically, and you won't feel like you're missing out or not doing your due diligence with the content.
Correct.
Well, now you have the time to pivot because your content's aligned. It's there.
Correct.
So we got
and the content. Yes. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. So what I was going to say is the content's always there. Like, that's the thing. And they give us 180 days for that. Like, and that's good. Like, that's a good thing because that means it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Like, I'll get to it. I always think of my content as like in the grocery store, it's the stuff on the shelves. Right? Like, it doesn't go bad. It's always going to be there. You can always get it. Right? Like, it can sit there. It can wait. It can, and like all the other stuff, like the relationship building is the produce. That's the stuff where if you don't grab it right now, it's going to get moldy and you're going to lose out on eating those raspberries. Like, you got to get it while it's in front of you,
Yeah. And I have to tell you, making decisions in the moment is something educators are always striving to be better at, but that's what I enjoy about teaching is like those buzzing around fun moments. But so in my classroom, students take on 25 different themed internships that are all sponsored by local businesses. And they just do that work through the framework we keep talking about. So what I chose to do, very much related to this concept, is rather than waiting for those moments to present themselves and knowing that I'd be smart enough in the moment to take advantage of them, I started also teaching in a way that allowed those conversations to be more or less organically planned when they're going to arise. Because when a student would come to me and they were working in a specific profession or field, very much related to their content, there would be elements of human nature that we'd have to talk about. How do you do a handshake? How do you give good eye contact? How do you discuss with somebody who's angry in customer service? And so a lot of teachers would tell me, "Oh, Rae, it's really hard to take a day out of your unit to essentially discuss these skills, these human skills. But when you build it into the way you teach and you give
Mm.
yourself the freedom to have these conversations, students show up better the next day to be able to master that content." So there's so much to dive into here, but I love that we're building classrooms where students are able to learn beyond the information that we as teachers are required to teach in the standard.
How did that come about? Like, I love that you did that. Was that a you thing? Was that a school thing? Like the 25 different businesses, did you do the work there to get them involved?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. It's a model that I get to do some work on with teachers now as well. And I think there's so many people out there, incredible educators, some of which you've interviewed, which I was like scrolling through this morning, I know. But incredible educators out there that are outstanding at engagement, masters at creativity in the classroom, masters at adding color and song and just beauty into our classrooms. Full transparency, like I said earlier, I'm not smart enough to do that on a whim. I really, really need structure. I can't just like cross my fingers that in the moment I'll have the right answer at the right time. So I tried to find some ways to ensure those moments happened. And so by using a business like a themed internship, I was kind of bringing in my childhood into my content and saying, okay, if I partner with a business that utilizes the standard concept I'm teaching, then now my students are seeing that real world purpose before they see the problem of the content. So they understand the why of the learning, and I can fold in these other really valuable reflective moments where at the end of a unit, a student's not only mastered the standard I need them to understand, but they've built relationships with somebody in our community, maybe more than one person, and they're able to say, all right, I just spent 3 weeks working at a restaurant. Did I enjoy it? Is
Yeah.
there elements I enjoy? Is there a skill in here that I found really hard or something I don't want to engage with in the future? And then, oh my gosh, you do this at an elementary age all the way through middle school. Now, when we're having conversations with high school students, they can say, well, I really have found to like customer service related
Yeah.
jobs. I love being able to talk to people. How can I use that in my future career field?
Yeah. And pretty much, and then again, once you learn what the kid likes, then you can really start designing, right? What lessons am I going to teach? So how did you decide on the businesses, and how did you get that? Like, what was your process for going out and getting them involved?
Yeah, so there's a whole system I
That's
use. I'm
awesome, by the way.
happy to no, I appreciate it. Happy to
Yeah.
share if
Yeah.
anyone's interested. But it starts with obviously knowing what your standard is, looking at your content. We have to use that backwards design, the boring stuff, the stuff I don't like, standard, target, all that stuff. And then it's understanding why your content is being taught, right? Why does this exist? And for a lot of teachers, they'd be like, well,
Mm.
I don't know, the state told me. And yeah, that's totally true. That's why I did it too. But the reality is that somebody
Right.
somewhere thought this was a valuable skill. So where is it? Where is it found in the
Mm.
world? And then is it found within your immediate community? Can you find somebody using that skill? And then to be honest, Brian, I just called him. Just
That's
picked up the
great.
phone. So it's fun.
Do you know, like, what are some skills right off the bat that you saw the connection with, like, immediately, where you're like, this job and this skill go together beautifully for certain kids? Because I'm guessing if you do 25 businesses, there's probably a couple that jump out where you're like, this one, they need this and this more than anything else.
I have to tell you, I always found an easy connection between the content and the real world application. I think the difference and the ones that really stick out is when I reached out to those businesses, them becoming invested in the work. I worked in the same community for like 10 years, and I had sponsors that literally never left. Like they became a sponsor the first year and they stuck with me all the way year after year after year. So when that content came up again, they were like, yep, we're in Miss Hewart's room. We're at this school. We're doing this work. And sometimes they even would develop it year over year. I had an incredible sponsor, Tobin's Pizza. It's a local pizza company in Bloomington, Normal, Illinois, middle of nowhere. And
Tobin, Lisa, you see Lisa on our chat right now. You know Lisa, right? Yeah.
there you go. I love it. And they did so much for us. Like they started just by donating napkins that had their logo on it to kind of add some flair to the unit. And from then on, they went all the way from like being able to help us support a full restaurant that we facilitated in
Wow.
our classroom on a day. They donated all the food. It was just, they were so fun. And my favorite part that they did, which I think had the greatest impact, was students at the end of their assessment had to design a placemat that taught the person sitting at the table how to do the content we were mastering. And then we took all of those placemats and they used them at the restaurant during a community night for the, town. And it was so fun to see families sit down at a restaurant that is great food. I encourage you all to go and talk about school for a few minutes, talk about learning for a few minutes. And to be honest, the information on the placemat taught them how to tip well. And so that's always good for our service.
No question, no question. And and it comes full circle where it's good for the business, right? You see
So
and
I think that's the
but
difference. It's good marketing for the companies. Our companies are now coming into our schools without having to donate money. They get to be themselves. What do they do for work? And then it's a circle effect. They come in and share information, and then our students master the content and go back out into our communities to educate our communities to be better. Now we're all doing better.
and I focus on behavior typically, and I think that there's nothing better for behavior kids, right? It's sort of like the concept of taking the kid who's always being helped and getting them to become the helper, right? When we're always being helped, it's easy to become helpless, which is what happens to a lot of our kids. But when you can flip that and the help becomes the helper, you often see a change in kids like no other. And this is a beautiful way to go about doing that.
Well, and this is why I'm just so fortunate to be able to talk on this all the time, because I not only have created time in my classroom to support my students, but I've also created an environment where purpose and relevancy comes before the learning of the concept. And I think that if we can all take a step in a direction to allow us to bring those elements into our classroom to
Yeah.
free us up as educators to do what we do best, which is discuss and facilitate with students, I think we'll all be better for it.
And purpose and relevancy are the key to motivation, right? That's what motivation is, right? Motivation is show me how it's best for me, right? I mean, whatever you want me to do, show me why it's going to make my life better today if I do it. And if you can show me that, typically I'm going to buy it, right? And if you don't show me that, I'm often not. And I think sometimes we make the mistake of we're trying to do that, but we're really showing kids how it's best for us, not best for them, right? Like as a kid, I didn't care about a test. I didn't care about a grade. Like I had a lot of zeros. Like getting my 15th zero isn't going to motivate me, right? I already had 14 others. Like the 15th one is going to be like, oh, okay, I guess I'll do my work today, right? I mean, typically, right, when you collect zeros, the next one isn't. So how does my life get better? And again, that always goes back to relationships, right? If I don't know the kid and I haven't taken the time to get to know them and to grow with them and to understand what they like, what they're interested in, then how can I connect what I have to their world?
Well, and I think that's an important part as educators of designing those connections. We need our students to be able to walk out of our school building and see their learning in action. It needs to be a connection to their immediate life. And then also a connection to when they're in adulthood. And I can't help but love the fact that I get to be in classrooms using this type of teaching and see the students in the moment, enjoying it, understanding it, and loving the learning experience. But then also I'm such a sucker for those after moments where years later, teachers tell me that their students have either gotten internships or full-time jobs with sponsors that were in their third grade classroom or eighth grade social studies class. I mean, this is the type of circling effect to reinvigorate our communities, is allowing everyone to be invested not only in their own individual journey, but in the community's thriving opportunity.
Totally agree. So I'm curious, like, how did you get involved with Teach Better, and how did that whole thing come about?
I met two strangers on Twitter. Legitimately, I got on Twitter, and it's a whole story, but long story short, I got on Twitter because I was working on my master's and I wanted to graduate, and this class I took at the last moment while I was writing my thesis required me to make a Twitter account, which I was like, that sounds terrible. And I met Jeff and Chad, who at the time were about a year or so into at the time they were trying to change the face of education. And I was like, oh, two strangers online, let's become best friends and work together. And
Because who doesn't do that all the time? Actually, now everybody does that. Back then, probably not everybody did.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know if I can fully support you meeting two strange men online and like them becoming your best friends, but like, pick your poison. It's so fun. Right. And no, I mean, now I love it. It's an incredible opportunity that's gotten me connected to so many great educators. And if nothing else, that's what I love. I love being able to be invited into classrooms and talk to educators doing great work. And now we're a team of 24 and trying to do the best we can to make a positive impact.
Is that what it is? A team of 24?
Yeah, we have a great group of educators that make us function. And I have to tell you, Brian, I have a lot of conversations where people are like, Rae, you do so much. Guys, I do very little. The team makes everything happen. I literally could not do half of what I get credit for without the people that are working day in, day out to make our blog publish something every single day, and our podcast network and the masterminds and the courses. Like, oh my gosh, they are so amazing. And all to ensure that educators get access to information for free. Like, that's the point.
That's the point. That's sort of the foundation of it all.
I mean, yeah, obviously there's a lot of things to learn out there, but the way that we can make education better is by giving each other access to things that have helped us. So, right. If you come to Teach Better, my hope is to encourage you, don't ever pay for anything. Find a free resource, or if you see a price tag on something, direct message me. Let me get you a code. Like, this is all about like sharing information and making connections. That's the goal.
Unless you want to bring me to your school for staff development, then you got to pay. I'm not part of Teach Better, but just so you know, that's how it works.
Schools, but hey, you know what? Travel's not free. Airfare is expensive.
No question. Listen, these times go quick. Any last bit of information or knowledge that you like to leave people with?
I just would love to share that I had shoulder surgery a few years ago, and I had this doctor come in and with this like big like shot. I'm not sure how you do with shots, but like I don't like needles. And I was like telling him, I was like, knock me out before you give me that shot. Like, just give me the gas and help me out. And I'm such a baby. And he looks at me with this like really stern face. He's like, Rae, seen a lot of patients with worse injuries than you, and they always get through it. I got you. You'll be fine. And it was this very like matter-of-fact response. And full transparency, I want to challenge all of you listening. That's how we are in education. There is a lot of garbage that we are sifting through right now. It is a hard job, but like, we got you. It's fine. Come together, be in community, choose to take it with, like by getting somebody to help you along your journey. And I'm excited to hopefully not only keep connecting with you, Brian, because I love the work you do, but hopefully connect with all these other wonderful people. So we can be a little bit better today than we were yesterday, and a little bit better tomorrow than we were today.
And I think the support system matters, right? Like I think it matters, and I think it matters who we support ourselves with and who we're around. And I like the positive energy. Like I like people who don't complain, who come every day, who show up, who come with a good attitude and who love it, right? Who are in this because they wanted to change the lives of kids. And that's the foundation of everything that we do, right? Everything that we do, all the other stuff is just a byproduct of what am I here for? Am I here to teach math, or am I here to teach kids? Am I here to teach science, or am I here to teach kids, right? And the reality is, I'll speak for myself. I know I didn't go into teaching because I like the word standard, or I like the word, like, I didn't even understand, like, what half those words mean. I went into this because the goal is to impact human beings. And like, the truth is, no matter what's going on in your school or where you are, or all the nonsense that's being thrown at us, which there's a lot from a lot of directions, the bottom line is, though, that ability is always there, right? No, like sometimes it gets buried, right? Sometimes it gets buried under the rubble of, standards and core and all these things we're trying to accomplish. But the truth is, if we can dig it out and find it, it's still there. And I encourage educators to go back to that, like go back to, why did you go into this in the first place? And what was your foundation? And sometimes, especially right now, it's really important to just turn back to that and focus on it every day.
Yeah, so wonderful. I'm excited to connect with all of you, and I appreciate being on the show. This is such an honor. I love the work that you do, and excited to listen to who's on in the next episode too.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you, Rae. It was awesome talking to you. Everybody else, don't forget to rate, subscribe, review, download. I'll be back with you same time in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. 2 weeks time. I'll see you then. Until then, I say peace. Peace. We're out of here. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining.